consider that acuity is the refined clarity of thought and perception which enables one to discern subtle truths.
Hi everyone, welcome to another week's episode of the Acuity Podcast, Politics and Culture. I'm the host, Dr. Aris Lavranos, CEO and Chief Litigator at Acuity Medical Law. And with me is my lovely, charming, wonderful co-host, Amy Hamm, who's our Communications Manager. Amy, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing pretty great this week. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time in the garden, which is my new Zen space. You know, I'm like growing tomatoes, I'm growing peppers, strawberries. I feel at peace. Yeah.
That's awesome.
How about you?
This week was insane. Several shifts, and they happened to be very busy. I came off of one earlier today. Obviously working at the firm, preparing for Court of Appeal on matter that we have here. It's been onboarding new clients, as you know, preparing for at least one, possibly two class actions this week. Like, it's been a real flurry. So
we have a lot going on at Acuity, and I feel like there's a lot going on that, you know, we can't necessarily talk about it yet, but I think we have some big things in store that are exciting.
Yeah, very much so. Sort of like spreading our wings a little bit, doing a little stuff outside Atlantic Canada, you know, from East Coast all the way to West Coast, some stuff in Ontario. So it is an exciting, dynamic time, but it's a lot, no doubt about it. Some housekeeping things. First, everyone listening, like, subscribe, share, do all those things if you care to, whatever it is that wherever you're watching this. Secondly, Amy and I are going to be going to the ARC conference. That's Jordan Peterson's response to the Davos conference in Switzerland, but he hosts the ARC conference. It is in London again. I don't know if it's going to continue to be in London forever, but it's kind of a nice meeting point, kind of central between Europe and the Americas. And we're going to be there on June 23rd, 24th, and 25th. We'll be trying to bring you some podcasts, probably something live, so keep that in the back of your minds because it'll be really exciting for us. There'll be lots of big names there, and hopefully we'll get a few of them for some interviews. And of course, Amy and I will be sharing what's going on there as well. So that's coming up. What do we have on the agenda for this week?
Yes, very excited for London. But okay, so this week we're going to focus. We're going to go from BC and then to London, and then we'll do our levity thing. But let's start in BC. So British Columbia, kind of, in my opinion, the woke capital of Canada, and we just went through this long, sometimes very dramatic leadership race for the Conservative Party of British Columbia. And so our Conservative Party has just elected a woman. She's 71. Her name is Kerry-Lynne Findlay. She won over her fellow...
71. Did not know that. That's,
yeah.
Wow.
She looks great. Doesn't she?
Yes, she does. Did not look like that. Doesn't move like she's 71. Her little victory party thing that I saw her dancing. Oh my God, look at that woman, 71 years old. My goodness, God bless her. She's killing
Brilliant.
Good for her.
Great woman. So she won over fellow leadership hopeful Caroline Elliott. It was a really slim margin, and they did sort of the ranked ballot system, which I don't know if I need to explain that in depth, but essentially what happened was she won like less than 100 votes, I think, was the difference between her and Caroline Elliott. And she had 51% of party members voting for her, 49% went to Elliott. So Findlay has had a lengthy career as a lawyer. She became a Queen's Counsel, now King's Counsel, of course, in 1999. She was first elected as a Conservative Member of Parliament in 2011. She served as the Minister of National Revenue in Stephen Harper's government. She served until 2015. She was defeated in her seat by a Liberal incumbent, and then she was re-elected as a Member of Parliament in 2019 until last year. She again lost her seat, and now we see her as the leader of the Conservative Party of BC, and hopefully the next Premier of this province. So as our new Conservative leader, what I would have to say about her, she's truly a Conservative. If you look at her platform, you'll see, she's all about private property rights, small government, freedom, including free speech, building our economy, making prudent decisions, very sort of run-of-the-mill Conservative stuff. She's used a slogan, faith, family, freedom. Within hours of her winning party leadership, the NDP and our Premier David Eby went into attack mode. And, they immediately started comparing her to Trump. She's been called divisive. And our premier, even at a press conference a couple days after she won, not only called her divisive, but claimed that she is BC's, quote, mega regional manager. Mega regional manager. He didn't offer...
I mean, we got to be honest. Like, it's awful, but it's great politics. You know what I mean? Like, if you consider the backlash that Canadians have to Trump, to Trumpism, I mean, like, his approval rating in Canada is abysmal. So tarring somebody like that is, as awful as it is, and as wrong as it might be, right? If the label doesn't actually particularly well fit, it's actually a great slur that's going to land politically. And I mean, whether we'd like to admit it or not, negative ads are extremely effective. That's why everybody does them.
They are. And it's scary because I think, we've talked about this. There's a possibility that, so David Eby, he's a premier, his approval rating has just tanked. He's dropped 20 points in a year. I think he's now at 33% approval. But then a new poll that from June 1st and 2nd is showing that the party overall, they're still lagging behind the Conservatives. But this is very similar to kind of the situation that we had nationally when the Conservative Party of Canada and Pierre Poilievre were, edging out the Liberal Party. And then Justin Trudeau's approval rating had tanked. And as we know, what happened is Trudeau prorogued Parliament. He stepped down. His party elected a new leader, and they stole an election. It's concerning because this has all the elements of what could potentially happen again in BC, despite the fact that the public right now seems to be leaning towards voting in the Conservative Party, and they're sick. They're absolutely sick of them. So it's a little bit scary.
Yeah, and I mean, like, if I was a betting man on this, then certainly Eby will step aside. Somebody else will come in, say, okay, it's time for more mainstream politics. It's time for more normalized politics. It's time to do quote-unquote common sense policy. And then they're just going to double down and do exactly the same things that Eby did because that's the ideology that they belong to. So the likelihood that whoever is going to succeed Eby on the left is going to be any kind of departure is near zero. And given Eby's collapsing approval rating, he will step aside. That would be my best bet. I would say it's actually a very comfortable bet.
Yeah, that would be concerning. And something that worries me a little bit, and I kind of, in the lead up to this Kerry-Lynne Findlay winning, I had at one point, I stayed pretty neutral and I had said, I'll support whoever wins this race as a Conservative leader. But I did at one point endorse Caroline Elliott, who just very narrowly lost. I think she would have been a great leader. I stand behind Kerry-Lynne Findlay. I like her platform. Something that does worry me is, her faith, family, freedom thing. And I say that because of the faith part. And that, for the reason I say that is, if you look, Stats Canada talks, or they've looked at how many people in Canada have a religious affiliation. And overall, 34.6% of Canadians say they have zero religious affiliation. But when you look at the numbers in British Columbia, it goes up to 52.1%. And the only place in Canada where that's higher is the Yukon. So I'm a little bit nervous that, we've clearly that's who the party chose and wanted, but I'm a little bit nervous that she's not going to maybe be able to overcome if the NDP pulls the same tricks that the Liberal Party did federally. I'm not sure that BC is going to be able to elect a Conservative government, and we really need to because we are in dire straits in this province. So it's scary to me.
It's totally a fair, criticism. I mean, like, the criticism is, like, it might be principle or it might be strategy. And, strategically, it's a difficult horse to back. And if that is her ideology and her fervent belief, there's a place for that. There's a place for that in politics. And if you want to go down that route strategically, then there's, risks and benefits. I would agree with you. despite the fact that I'm a devout Christian and I applaud people of any background exercising their faith, it's just risky. It just carries too much negative potential. It's not a particularly smart move. So we'll see how that kind of comes back to bite her. We'll see what kind of negative attack ads there are and how that develops.
Yeah.
But it would be amazing to see a Conservative government in the most left-leaning province in Canada, and then that would start the domino effect across Canada and then potentially at a federal level. But I'll be honest, Amy, I don't know about what your forecast. I think it's very unlikely.
Yeah, I'm trying to remain hopeful. And I posted
Good.
on X yesterday. It was like, imagine, and then colon, like, the Conservative Party of BC wins. We get rid of the BC Human Rights Tribunal, DEI, SOGI, which is the sexual orientation, gender identity, indoctrination in schools. And then we just, we fix our economy. We make deals with Alberta. We get pipelines going to the coast. And just how amazing would that be? And there have been hundreds of people who are like, oh, I really want this to happen. And they've shared the same sentiments. So like, I'm afraid that it won't happen. I'm afraid that our voter base is too sort of indoctrinated and they go along too much with this nonsense about Maple MAGA and whatnot. So
yeah, it's too powerful. The perspective that Canadians have is too anti-Trump and it's too anti-freedom at this point, despite the fact that young people are increasingly pro-freedom, right-wing in their ideology, their perspectives, their voting habits. They don't represent a sufficient size in the voting bloc. They certainly don't represent a sufficient size in the influencing market. So it's just very, very difficult. And then for somebody to come out and be hard line on that perspective is inviting disaster. But hope is, it's the first step. Like, you're not going to succeed without some hope. So we have to start there.
Yeah. And the latest Ledger poll that I mentioned, they show that, the province overall, they're rating the Conservative Party of BC at 45%, NDP 41%. But even when it's broken down by geographical area, even Metro Vancouver, it has the smallest lead, but the Conservatives are still slightly ahead of the NDP. And that's huge because like Metro Vancouver, that is obviously woke central in the province, that is already woke central of the country. So, I think it's really important to recognize that despite the fact that the voters exist in this sort of mainstream media economy that has, in my opinion, brainwashed a lot of people into thinking that it's like progressives versus evil, horrible, pro-Trump people that should never be in power and they'll take away everyone's human rights. There's still an actual lead in a poll. That's huge as far as I'm concerned. So I'm not totally willing to let go. Yeah.
Yeah, it does matter. It does matter. And, Scott Adams famously said that, like, everything proceeds until enough resistance has developed against it, right? So, the left in BC has destroyed a beautiful province, has destroyed a beautiful city, and at some point, the people are going to put aside any kind of amount of propaganda and say, look, I'm done being poor. I'm done with all this ideological bullshit all around me. I'm done with it infecting schools, academia, everything in life, sports, every aspect of my culture. It's time to move on.
Property rights, that's a huge one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, of course. So, hopefully we will see people continue down that line of change. The problem is, as you said, and we're going to talk about this again later in the show, very, very provocatively, is the propaganda that Canadians believe in large part. The mainstream media establishment is still far, far too influential in Canada. And Canada and Canadians, we have a legacy of seeking diplomatic and slow-paced solutions, right? I had a lovely conversation with this wonderful lady in the emergency department the other day, and she was telling me that the Canadian history, she was a historian, Canadian history is generally speaking quite boring, and she said that it's because the country is quite young. And I said, yeah, but the U.S. is also quite young, but it's extremely exciting because they have a legacy of fighting, whether it's in wars, and it's heroism, and the Wild West, and wars of independence, and saviors of World War II, and so on and so on. And Canada has a much more diplomatic perspective, so much more slow-paced, and so we'll see. But I love it. I'm glad for her. I support her. I hope that the Conservatives will rally around her, because a narrow margin in a primary race would lead to more divisiveness, as opposed to like a blowout, in which case it's like, well, obviously everyone will support the winning horse. But I hope, and I'm sure that the Conservatives in BC will rally around her.
I sure hope so. It's very nerve-wracking. And my plea to everyone in British Columbia would be just rally around her, because the internal division, the infighting, the purity tests matter not at all in the long term. What matters is fixing our province, defeating the NDP, defeating the ideological zealots that have taken control of our province and the country too. But BC in particular is a heinous example, because we're like a concentration of the insanity of what the Liberal Party has done. It's even worse here. So that said,
speaking about insanity and wickedness, what's item number 2?
Yeah, this is a really dark story. We want to talk about Henry Novak, who he's the 18-year-old. Maybe we'll play the video here, which is very hard to watch.
Yeah, just push pause for 1 second, Mark. If you can pause that for 1 second. I'm just going to put a disclaimer out, okay, so that everybody knows. This is one of the most difficult things that I've to watch. I've watched it, and it's horrendous. So we're going to play it in its entirety, and then we're going to talk about it. But like if there's like shy audiences or sensitive audiences, just be mindful of the fact that this is extremely difficult. I will say most of the difficulty is in the context of what happens, rather than the actual video is not particularly shocking. But go ahead.
My dad's told me. He keeps dropping side to side, so I'm just trying to keep him set up.
Right.
He's got a mouthful of blood. I don't want him.
He was on the bin on the other side of this gate.
He's jumped over these fences and stuff like that. And he's up
Move
here.
away, mate.
He's obviously fallen from there. And he slipped from there.
There's other shoes left over there, mate.
What's your name, mate? Huh? Has anyone been hurt other than him?
Yeah, me. He's grabbed my brother. He's took my turban off. Started grabbing my head.
Are you injured?
Yeah, I've got swollen eye, little bruise.
Alright, just step back a little bit for me. Someone flag these down.
Got this stud.
Right, let's get you out of there, shall we?
I was in bed asleep. Whenever just find me up there, look, someone's attacked me.
I can't breathe.
Grab his other arm.
Come running around the corner.
What's happened to you, alright?
This stud.
You've been stabbed? Whereabouts? Don't think you have, mate.
Look, that's what. And then I'm like, you've got mouthful of. I want to keep you up.
Hand?
I can't breathe.
Put the hand in the cuff, mate.
This is like
can't breathe.
times this has happened to us. We've been walking, we parked multiple times we've had people racist
90 foot.
nothing happens.
He's saying he's been stabbed, so
Where
let's
is it
just
you
check
think you've
him.
been stabbed? In the face? Oh no, but we have to check, don't we?
Right.
In the face?
Just get these back off, get their details and that, and I'll keep hold of him.
Should we
Right, keep you on your side, mate. You better retrieve then.
So go.
Saying to him, I'm keeping him on his side. We were sat up when we had him here, but he didn't like it. What's your name, mate? At the moment you are under arrest, and that's for assault, so you do not have to say anything, may harm in defence. If you do not mention when questioned, it's up to which you later rely in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence, alright? He's going to be sick, I think.
Yeah, he's dying. He's dying. These are his last moments. These are his last breaths.
What's his name?
I just want you to call it.
Yeah, we've got this male, he's
just-
been beat up. Are we able to get an ambulance, please?
His pupils aren't even reacting.
Yeah.
Oh my God. This is such a visceral reaction that I get from this. It is spectacular. I can feel my stomach churn. It gets hard to breathe watching this poor kid die, and the callousness that's displayed by these police officers. It's absolutely horrific. Horrific. One of the worst things I have ever seen.
Yeah. I can't, I'm like, I'm, I feel like I can't even talk. I'm tearing up because it's like, this is an 18-year-old boy who he did absolutely nothing wrong. And he was attacked, and as we've seen in other videos, his attackers decided cowardly to call the police and make false reports and say, oh, we were attacked by this white guy, racially attacked, knowing that they had stabbed him repeatedly. I can't remember how many times. And so adding insult to injury is like this poor young man, university student, was murdered in cold blood, and his last moments alive on this earth were being handcuffed and told, no, I don't think you have been stabbed, mate, and treated like a fucking criminal for a crime he didn't commit, while his murderer stands very coolly beside him and apparently was given the royal treatment by police. I heard in another story that the killer was brought to the police station not in handcuffs. The man he murdered died in handcuffs, begging for help, saying, I can't breathe. And apparently the killer was brought to the police station, no handcuffs, and was allowed to walk around and choose like what sort of food he wanted to eat and whatnot.
Yeah, so let's start at the beginning. Okay, so this poor young man, he was in some sort of verbal altercation with his assailant, who was the criminal charged, convicted with murdering him. And he was stabbed multiple times by a dagger that was illegal by its nature. The criminal, Mark, can we find his name? I want to say it was Gurpreet, but Gurpreet, I believe, was actually the brother.
Vikram Digwa.
Vikram Digwa. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So Henry was found in the court of law to have done literally nothing wrong. That nobody believed that there was any racial issues there. Nobody believed that he assaulted his killer Vikram. Vikram was of a Sikh background. He, in the UK, was legally permitted to carry around his ceremonial dagger, a kirpan, Kirpan, a kirpan. However, it's seeming that he held a second type of a dagger, which was illegal. It was like an Afghani/Persian style of dagger that's straight and designed for piercing and penetrating armor, and stabbed him multiple times. The coroner said that one of the nature of the wounds that Henry sustained was going to be fatal, regardless of what the police did at that time. Regardless of that being the case or not, the story gets unfortunately worse and worse. So Vikram's brother Gurpreet called their version of 911, which is 999, and told them that Vikram had been racially assaulted, verbally, physically, and so on. So when the police come there, one of the chief tragedies of this is that they have blinders on. And this is largely influenced by policy. This is influenced by training. This is influenced by emphasis. This is influenced by the political discussion, by narratives. This is influenced by pressure, peer pressure, so that they're not called racists because of lack of progression within police force, and so on and so on. So it's totally multifactorial why they acted this way. But it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, each human being has agency, and they're able to reflect and to reject ideas that are going to influence them in a style that's going to be such negative practice. So the police officers arrive with the bias of some kind of racial profiling. They come, and as you see with your own eyes, Vikram is standing there pointing at his face saying, well, he ripped my turban off and he hit me in the eye. Okay, there's nothing there to suggest any of that. Nothing there at all. So, I mean, like, when you're called to an altercation as a police officer, as a paramedic, as a physician, whatever the case might be, you hear all kinds of nonsense. But you have to be able to filter through that, and you have to come in with an open mind. You don't have blinders on. So the police saw Vikram, and then they see Henry, the alleged criminal, who turned out to be entirely innocent and who died. And Henry, as you saw, is collapsed.
Yeah.
He can barely talk. He can barely move.
Yeah.
He is like young. We don't know what else may have happened there. He's offering no sense of resistance. He cannot. And they end up cuffing him, declining to investigate, declining to ask questions, declining to look at him, see blood coming out of him. There was a slash mark across his face. They didn't even realize that because they didn't even look at the fucking kid's face. They didn't even look at his face as they pull him along the gravel. They handcuff him, read him his rights, and he's literally dying. And then by the time the EHS gets there, he's pronounced and he's dead. So this happened last year, but the body cam footage was only released 2 or 3 days ago as a consequence of the sentencing and the completion of the trial. So Vikram, the criminal, was sentenced to 25 years in jail, minus certain mitigating factors, including his background, the fact that he had no other previous issues with the law, and it was reduced down to 21 years plus 190 days, almost 22 years, based on the amount of time that he had already served. At that same time, other things were going on. So his brother and him were talking in the back of the car on the way to the police station, and they said in Punjabi to one another, well, if there's any video footage, if there's any audio footage, there will be no self-defense argument here because it's obvious what happened. And they continued to lie to the police officers. They continued to lie throughout the investigation. They obviously pled not guilty. They obviously pled the sense of defense, right? The case lasted so long and so on. So that's one thing. The second thing that happened is Vikram's mother took the knife, the device, the instrument that killed him, the weapon, and took it to try and hide it, to conceal it. So she was charged and convicted with that, and I don't know what her sentencing is. Surprisingly, I haven't seen much report on that, but she was convicted, and she has time that she's going to serve in prison in the UK.
I think
As
she's
a consequence
awaiting
of all this,
sentencing still.
She's still waiting for sentencing? Maybe
I
that's
think
why.
so, yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense, because surprisingly, I had not heard about that. And so, of course, now the UK is on fire as a consequence of this. And the political ramifications, the political blowback of this, the specific details of how Vikram was treated by the police, both at the time and since then, how Henry was treated by the police, the whys and all those kinds of things have exploded. And this case has lit an absolute firestorm in the UK.
It's horrifying, and the way, bringing this back to Canada, the way that it's been treated by the CBC in particular. So we want to compare and contrast this story, but in the CBC. So they framed it as it was Britain's far right hijacked the murder of Henry Nowak. And of course, we have to look at their coverage of George Floyd, because this is, it's about men dying in police custody. And I would like to read 2 quotes that the CBC wrote about both men. So the CBC said about George Floyd, when this is 5 years after the fact in this story here, what's changed in 5 years? The whole thing was caught on video, and once it got out, it set America on fire. Protests spread across the country and then the world. Promises of sweeping changes to policing and greater commitment to racial justice and equity were made. And then let's compare to what they said about Henry Nowak. This is what they said in the past week. Henry Nowak's family pleaded that his murder not be used to stoke hatred in the United Kingdom, but key figures from Britain's far right appear determined to trigger another battle over race regardless.
So can we, okay, so go back up to the top there, Mark. Okay, so a few things that we're just going to notice right away, okay? How Britain's far right. First off, they're referring to the Nigel Farage's party Reform, amongst others, but in the article, Nigel Farage is featured prominently and the Reform Party is featured prominently. So Nigel Farage said that people should respond to this is naturally and appropriately cold fury. And he chose those words very specifically. During the George Floyd protests, during the riots that followed and all the events, both the Labour Party in the UK and the Tories used rage, used fury, used all those kinds of synonyms repeatedly. And Nigel Farage was absolutely castigated by everyone for that. The second thing that we'll talk about that hypocrisy is that people have been saying that Nigel Farage stated that white lives matter and that white lives should be addressed, and there should be a concern over white lives in the UK. And everyone said, well, it's not white lives or black lives, it's all lives and all this kind of stuff. However, if we look at the hypocrisy, Kemi Badenoch, the head of the Tories at that time with George Floyd, had very specifically said that black lives matter. And now she is saying the black lives, white lives, we shouldn't be talking about this way. So you see, the Unit Party in the UK, whether it's the Tories and Kemi Badenoch or the Labour Party and Keir Starmer, they are together on a front. They are on the same ideological spectrum when it comes to racial relations, diversity, equity, inclusion, and so on. And this was reflected because the policies that led to these kinds of initiatives in the UK under the police started under the Tory government. It did not start under Labour. And so if you look at the racial programs and policies in the UK, in Southampton, where this took place, you can see very specifically that they say that they are going to pursue objectives in the UK through policing to advance equitable outcomes between minorities and whites. They specifically state that they will not be colorblind in their approach. They specifically state that they reject that explicitly, like in those words, that we are not pursuing such a program, that they want to seek equitable outcomes, that the number of arrests amongst white people is going to be the same as the number of arrests amongst minorities. And of course, if that doesn't mirror reality, which it cannot, it literally cannot, because minorities are poorer and poorer people commit more crimes. So it isn't because they are racial minorities, it's because minorities tend to be more impoverished. And so just by the statistics, just by the facts of reality, pursuing something like that is by its definition not fair. Yeah. And so this, of course, has exploded in the UK, and now the BBC has had to issue a massive apology to Nigel Farage for the unfair coverage and misquoting him and mislabeling him and his perspective. So we see a huge backlash against the establishment there.
And when you talk about policy and blinders, I think you mentioned when we watched the video, and because we both have this healthcare background, police don't have a healthcare background, but they do interact with the public in numerous situations, including healthcare emergencies all the time. And the fact that they walked into the situation with a young male who looks fit and healthy that was behaving in that manner, he's clearly, I think to anyone without ideological blinders on, would immediately look at that situation and think there must be some kind of medical distress going on, because we received a report that this person was the aggressor, and yet here he is, barely able to speak, lying on the ground, unable to move. And it's like they couldn't even see past their ideology, the DEI ideology, to do a proper assessment.
And it's not implicit, right? It's explicit. They said, I don't think you have been stabbed, mate. So it's not that this was like a carelessness. You know what I mean? This was a purposeful rejection of the framing that was offered by the dying boy, right? This is a purposeful ignoring of it. I heard you. I deny you. I'm not going to investigate it. I'm coming here with my blinders on, and I'm going down a specific path. So to me, of course, the 21-year sentence for Vikram is absurd, is absolutely ludicrous. And if you look at the sentencing guidelines in the UK, there's some debate about it, but there's an appeal that's being done by the Crown. I should say that there's an appeal that's been requested by many members of the public to revisit the sentencing because they thought that the judge's sentencing was far too lenient. In theory, this should have been greater than 25 years and then mitigated against rather than mitigated under. Regardless, the police officers are in the stage of investigation by the IOPC, the whatever it is that Internal Affairs that's investigating that.
Something, yeah.
Right. And they have not been reprimanded yet. They have not had any kind of punishment yet. I know of at least one, or possibly two, that have resigned, so the news says. So they are currently avoiding any kind of repercussions and so on. But I mean, like, what do they deserve as a consequence of this? And I pose it to all of you to write out and comment below. What do you think, in your hearts, in your minds, do you think would be reflective and appropriate disciplinary action for them? And you should think about this, and you should steel man the position. Are they at fault because, as a consequence of their training, as a consequence of the institutional policy and programming, that they went down this route? Or is it they themselves who have a greater ownership of the error, and that they should have been able to remove those blinders, and that, regardless of what pressures they feel, they should have acted differently? So you should feel free to comment below, but there's a lot more to talk about here. Amy, please continue, and then I want to go back to that CBC article.
Yeah, I mean, you said he likely, as per the coroner, would have died whether or not there was medical intervention at that time, but I think that's besides the point, because what the point is that we have a service there. When you're a police officer, you're working it's a public trust position, and you can't be trusted, I don't think, if you show that you have blind fealty to an ideology that places one race against another or above another. And again, it goes to the difference between equity and equality. This is obviously not equality when white people are assumed to be worse and bad, and obviously, at anyone's word, the aggressor. And we should not give a shit about a young white man who's claiming that he was stabbed and he's visibly and clearly dying in the name of equity. And that's so disturbing and wrong. And I think going back to the CBC, and even I think partly why this story affects me so much is that this isn't just about the UK. This is happening in Canada as well. And I know even in the school curriculum in my province, which I've looked through, and this doesn't mean that every teacher says this to every classroom, but I have seen in our on our provincial website, school curriculum, the notion of white privilege. And I talk to my sons about this because I want to know, like, number one, do your teachers talk to you about, like, the gender crap, which we talk about a lot? But I also want to know if anyone ever tells them that they have white privilege, because it's like, I have 2 white boys, and I will lose my mind if they have anyone ever tell them that they are bad or wrong, or there's something inherently, unproper with them because of the fact that they're white boys. That's just, I can't handle it. And this is an institutionalized version of that. It's unacceptable. And then to see the CBC also doing that in their reporting, it fills me with so much rage. I can't even. Yeah.
I mean, it's evil.
Describe.
It's evil. It's evil. But it's wrong. You know what I mean? Like, it's evil and it's wrong. So I mean, like, to cascade an entire race for alleged evils that are unique to them, but only by history and not in current practice, is insane. I mean, like, it's absolutely ridiculous. And then to foist that on children, to foist that on institutions that are supposed to have as neutral, unbiased, and as much trust as you can garner from society as possible, is also evil. So, I mean, like, this is completely self-destructive. As Gad Saad says, this is a form of suicidal empathy, so it's absolutely ridiculous. So, Mark, can we go up to that CBC article? Because one of the things that I want to take home, there are 2 huge lessons from this. The first is what Amy just said, is what is the likelihood or the potential for something like this happening in Canada? Of course, that is a really critical thing that we should take home as Canadians. We can feel terrible for this family, which we do. God bless Henry. I hope he's in paradise. He seems like he was an absolutely wonderful human being. I don't even like thinking about it. It makes me so emotional, I swear, to think that this kid is dead. It's so awful. Anyway, so of course we should feel for them sympathetically. We should have some sense of decency and civility for this tragic loss of life. But what are the take-home messages? The first is, how do we reject and abstain from something like this happening as a policy level in Canada? How do we prevent this from happening in police circles, in the judiciary, in healthcare systems, and so on? So, of course, we should be mindful of that so that we can campaign and advocate against it. we should, as conservatives, like we've said, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, you should be joining boards. You should be trying to influence policy and direction so that you can do that. But the second thing that's also critical, is understanding why those policies come. What are the sources of those pressures in society so that we can neutralize, we can destroy those pressures, and we have far less influence. Okay, so Mark, can you zoom in? Because I can't read any of that. I'm only 40 years old, I swear, but that is just great. Okay, and now start scrolling down.
We've got to be paying attention to these policies, because what happened to this young man is a direct result of the policies that led to it. And we have these policies in Canada. This is what's happening here. And if you think that this won't personally touch you or affect your life, you could be wrong, because it could at any point. And do you want to just go along and think this doesn't affect me? It doesn't matter. I'm just trying to be nice. I'm just trying to be inclusive. DEI, it sounds nice. It sounds great. There are real world consequences to these bad policies, and the death of this innocent young man is one of those consequences, and it can also happen in Canada.
So go up to the very top. Mark, I'm just going to go over the first 3 or 4 paragraphs in this article to talk to you about how it is that the CBC, which is still largely trusted, respected in Canada, which it absolutely should not be. There is no more contemptible institution of propaganda in Canada than the CBC. Henry Nowak's family pleaded that his murder not be used to stoke hatred in the United Kingdom. Okay, great. Why is that the first paragraph? Right? That's a form of propaganda. Why is it inserted there as number 1? Right? Because the suggestion immediately, the framing of the article is that someone is using it to stoke hatred in the United Kingdom. Right? And then it's going to get into the politics of it. So the framing of this article is that they are going to leverage the tragedy of Henry Nowak against the family's wishes to stoke hatred in the United Kingdom. That's the implicit suggestion of the framing based on the title, the primary paragraph, the thesis of the article. And that's not. Nobody's out there telling you to hate Sikhs. Nobody's out there telling you to hate immigration. Immigration policy and restricting immigration policy is not hate-filled. It doesn't have to be hate-filled. In fact,
can I add as on the flip side, but when the CBC covered the death of George Floyd, the opposite was the thing. They said protest spread. It was America was set on fire. They encouraged the division. They encouraged this to happen. They encouraged a racial fight, but not when it's about white people.
Totally. Okay. Second paragraph. But key figures from Britain's far right appear determined to trigger another battle over race regardless. Okay. So a few things that we can say right there. Number 1, far right. We have to put that in quotations. They use it, they abuse it. Far right. That is a pejorative label that is used to castigate the Reform Party, as you'll see further below. Nigel Farage, who's leading, who's surging in the polls, who just now in their council stage elections, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, won 3,000 plus council seats, stealing both from the Tories and from Labour. So imagine if our quote-unquote far right, let's say Maxime Bernier, stole seats from the Conservatives, nobody would think anything of it. But imagine if they stole seats from the Liberals. So that's a spectacular victory for Reform. They are not a far right. They are a widely accepted, spectacularly successful party. So to castigate them as being far right is a total misnomer, as a form of brainwashing. Determined to trigger another battle over race regardless. To trigger another battle. What's the other battle? What other battle is existing? Are they talking about George Floyd? Because Reform didn't exist. That was not a concept, and that was stoked by other people. So these battles are not coming from the far right. They're actually coming from the institutions. Next paragraph. Nowak, an 18-year-old university student, was studying finance in the coastal city of Southampton when he was stabbed to death in December 2025, following the life sentencing of his killer this week. Okay. Following the life sentence of the killer this week. That's
the lead. You buried the lead. As a journalist, you buried the fucking lead. His killer was sentenced to life this week. That is the headline. That is the lead.
Right. So, following the life sentence of his killer this week. So, okay, we're on paragraph 3-4. Also, look how they use that to diffuse that there isn't already appeals for the sentencing because it was far too lenient. Right? They suggest to you that the life sentencing of his killer this week. Boom. The guy was sentenced to life in prison. The system works. What else do you want? Actually, no, there's a lot more to that story than that. And even the fact that he was quote-unquote sentenced to life, he was not sentenced to life. Life in prison can be literal life. You die in prison, 30 years, 25 years, 21 years, 20 years, and so on and so on. So that's a complete mislabel that is also obfuscating the fact that all of that is contested and is controversial. Hampshire police released harrowing body cam footage showing responders, officers handcuffing the dying teenager while ignoring his pleas for help. Instead, they initially believed his attacker, 23-year-old Vikram Digwa, a Sikh. He falsely claimed that Noack had racially abused and assaulted him. Okay, totally true. Let's go to the next paragraph, because let's see what it is, how it is that they frame. Okay, and then we move
grievance.
On. And so we move on. We move past the fact that there are these policies. We move past the fact that the misleading of the police officers was largely based on institutional programs. And now we're going to talk about that later. We'll put a little addendum at the end. We'll put a little scribble at paragraph 15 or 16. Prominent anti-immigrant figures and members of the UK's political far right have pounced on the release of the video, claiming it shows British police discriminate against white people by having more lenient rules for racialized people. Okay. By claiming...
Racialized people.
Right. Claiming it shows British police discriminate against white people by having more lenient rules for racialized people. This is not a quote-unquote claim. This is the reality. They literally have that. It's on the Southampton, which is the police precinct and district. It's on their website. The goals are clear. They are explicit in black and white. This is not some insane claim made by extreme figures. This is the obvious declaration of the policies from the police themselves.
It's policy. Yeah, we had on one of our recent episodes where we had Tamara Leach, and she talked about in her sentencing where she refused to have the court use the Gladio principles against her, which again are, it's a form of this where you have, it's a quote unquote mitigating factor, your race. And she said, no, even though I'm part Indigenous, don't use this on me because I disagree with it. It's unfair and it's unjust. And as you said, it's not a crazy conspiracy theory. It's literally policy. They consider your racial background or immigration status as like a mitigating factor in the crimes you commit.
Totally. Scroll down, Mark. I want to keep going. So this is talking about the anger of revelations, 11 police officers overnight Tuesday in Southampton. Keep going. Here's Tony Robinson, the spectacularly effective right-wing activist, looking particularly smug in this picture. It's not a particularly flattering picture for this article, but it is what it is. That's okay. And keep going down. So he says, this is about race. He said, as white people, we are treated as second-rate citizens by our own police force. I appreciate the quote being attributed to him, and I'm sure that those are his exact words, and I'm sure they represent his feelings. Hundreds of demonstrators approached the Digwa family home and attempted to breach police lines, pelting officers in their vehicles with flares, glass bottles, and other objects. This, of course, is one-sided. It doesn't speak to the fact that there were, it looked on the video, probably 1,000 or more people there. 99% of them were acting completely civilly. Peacefully. So, the whole idea, that's right, that there's like a largely peaceful protest, which has become tongue-in-cheek these days. This was obviously a largely peaceful protest.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's move on from this, because we can go through this and nitpick this apart and constantly. Look at the picture they put of him. Nigel Farage was grieving tremendously, and look at the glee that they put in this picture of him, suggesting in the context of this horrible tragedy that he's just leveraging it. So, Nigel Farage was extremely somber. He and Zaya Youssef, who's one of his shadow ministers, spectacular human being. I encourage everybody to follow Zaya Youssef on X, and Nigel Farage. But this has understandably stoked some incredible rage in the British people. Incredible rage.
Yeah. What
a horrendous tragedy.
Story. It's really to be honest, that's the first time I've watched the full video because I haven't been able to stomach it. I think of my sons too much when I watch it because I think that it's something that they could be susceptible to if we don't turn Canada around. Canada, I think, is following the same footsteps as Britain in terms of both, the immigration policy and this, we regularly see in this country that persons who've committed crimes are able to use their immigration status or race as a mitigating factor, and they don't get punished in the same way that just a white person in the country would be. And then if you dare to point it out, you will be called a horrible racist. It's extremely disturbing, and it's not the sort of Canada that I want my sons to grow. Why would anybody want their kids? It's like it's a horseshoe. We've gone so far from trying to protect people against discrimination. And the horseshoe, I guess, goes from equality to equity, because, I think equality is a fine goal to have, is that everybody is treated equally and is given the same rights and opportunities in life. And equity is like you're ramming it down, you're forcing people to have the same outcomes no matter what horrible things they do, or no matter who they are. It's a perversion of what was originally a good principle. And I think it's so angering to me to see the CBC propagandize this. You're absolutely right. It is propaganda. And because they don't want people to sort of just wake up and realize how absolutely insane, and they're the ones who are divisive and who are doing something that's egregiously unethical and wrong and discriminatory.
Right. So that's why, I mean, like, we have to be able to look past the horror and the tragedy, to steel ourselves, and to be able to come away with lessons that we need to be able to implement and apply to our own lives and locales. And the first one is to make sure that we resist the impulse to adopt any such ridiculous, evil, insane policies at institutional levels here. And the second is to be very, very mindful of how, where, and what news you consume, because the propaganda is very covert. It is not an easy thing to recognize. It may not be a lie that's overt. It may very well be the truth, but only a partial truth. It may be the way that it is framed, the language that it is used, the perspectives that are highlighted, and so on. So just be very mindful of that. And, God bless Henry and the Nowak family.
Yeah. Tell all of the boomers in your life to stop watching the CBC. That's our public service announcement for this episode. No more CBC.
Yes. Yeah. I do think that I was thinking about this, Amy, and we'll talk about this at another time, but I think that it'd be very reasonable to start a segment on each of our episodes going through CBC articles and just continuously pruning them and saying, okay, what is the reality of the situation? What is it that they reported? Next one, next week, same thing, and so on. Because I think that we would do a tremendous service that way. If you like the idea, comment below. We love your comments, okay?
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Our moment of levity. And we need it. We need something hysterical and funny. Time for some levity.
We're talking about Pride season. It's become an entire season, but I feel like it's all year round. So here's GLAAD, the GLAAD website. So GLAAD originally it stood for Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation. Here's their LGBTQ. They haven't even adopted the full acronym yet. I'm surprised they haven't been accused of a hate crime for that. But they wrote on their website, it will scroll through it, all of the various days of the year that are dedicated to the alphabet cause. And it's essentially almost every single day of the year. So let's just scroll down and see. So February, why is there nothing in January? I don't know, but okay. Black HIV AIDS, we're going a little bit too
Transgender Day,
fast.
Visibility, Asexuality Day, Non-Binary Parents Day, Lesbian Visibility Day, International Day Against Homophobia, Pansexual Day, Pulse Remembrance, Stonewall Day, Queer Youth of Faith Day.
Wow. Lesbian Ants Day. Okay.
Mark, thanks for finding that. July 13th, Lesbian Aunts Day. Gotta love
I had a lesbian aunt. I did. She was lovely.
Make sure you contact her on July 13th, Amy. I'm going to text you a reminder.
Oh, okay.
Gay Uncle Day.
Gay Uncle. Wow.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So, I mean, like, it's so funny that there's like a binary there, aunts and uncles, as opposed to, some other term to associate with them.
I think that's transphobic.
Southern HIV. Yeah.
Okay, what else? National Coming Out Day. Latinx. I love that term. National Latinx. So every various group with HIV also has their own day, apparently. Okay. Asexual Awareness Day. Why is asexual, by the way, on the spectrum of sexualities? And I really don't get it. That's also a question I had about the gender identity, where some people say their gender identity is agender. And I'm like, but wait, so you don't have a gender, but you're saying that your gender is not a gender? Please, it
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
I mean, like, it is nonsense. It's totally incoherent. And then HIV Cure Research Day. The last day of the year to celebrate is the HIV Cure Research Day. I love it. Yeah, that website alone is enough levity. You know what I mean? Like, that was already dynamite. Lesbian aunts and gay uncles days. But there's more. Yeah, Pride season has begun, and in full
Let's go
support.
to my
Amy and I have found some of
local.
the best.
This is my city. Their local Pride group. Newest Pride. Let's do gay stuff together. And then Mark, if you click on About at the top, so we're so gay, and so are you. Okay, so how much proof do you need that you've moved beyond like inclusion and acceptability to trying to impose your sexuality on people? It's like, we're so gay and so are you. Let's do gay stuff together. What?
This is spectacular. Yeah. I love it. I mean, I will give them credit for the colors. I'm colorblind. I like the fact that they are really vibrant. Those are very recognizable and kind of appealing to my eye. But like, what drivel? What nonsense?
Well, now that we've clicked on their website, we're gay. So
yeah,
sorry.
I'm glad that it's like Mark's browser, not mine. So I mean, like, your algorithm is screwed, bro.
Oh,
your
yeah,
algorithm
maybe
is
it's
screwed.
Sorry, Mark, you're gay now. I think we're safe, but maybe not you. I don't know. Not that there's anything.
I think that there were some other hysterics.
Yeah, disclaimer, nobody has any problem with gay people, and all of my I have gay and trans friends, believe it or not. Like, people don't even think that I would have trans
Nobody will
friends,
believe that, Amy.
but I do.
Nobody will believe that.
None of them like Pride because they're like, Pride has just gone so insane and off the rails. And I'm like, yeah,
me too.
agree.
My gay friends say the same thing.
Yeah,
My gay friends say the same thing. Gay, lesbian
This is
friends,
just
they're all
a
like,
joke.
no, I have nothing to do with that. Yeah.
Here's
Peppa Pig.
Peppa Pig, the children's show, wishing us a happy Pride.
Yeah.
Lovely. I love the comments. Oh, God.
We're celebrating the joy of being, gay.
Seeing all the snowflakes getting offended, being LGBT, blah, 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 isn't a choice.
Love is love. I mean,
Yeah.
can you find any?
I like that.
like-
Groomers grooming. I mean, Mark just likes it.
I mean, like, we didn't really need to have like a happy Pride from Peppa Pig to think that Peppa Pig is gay. I mean, Peppa Pig is obviously a gay show. Like, just look at them. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they were literally a gay show, but sort of like metaphorically, metaphysically, look at them. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Okay, let's pull up the Sesame Street too. We've got a gay Sesame Street as well, which...
But I mean, like, Sesame Street is the gayest, right? I mean, like, they're the ones who have been doing this for the longest, and it's they are the strongest standard bearers for this movement.
When I was a
What did
kid,
they
I
say
wasn't
there?
allowed to watch Sesame Street because my mom thought it was too disturbing and fast-paced and, like, loud and noisy and, like, going too fast, and she thought it would just... I think to her, she was like, let's read books and, like, be quiet and be slow and, like, thoughtful. And Sesame Street was like, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, no Sesame Street. So I don't have a lot of exposure to Sesame Street, but they also made a Pride post for kids, which Mark can quickly pull up.
Okay, so here's the Sesame Street Instagram post on this. And one of my favorite things about this is not even the characters. This looks like the characters were crushed up, mashed up, torn apart, and put into these little ribbons. Because none of the characters, like, this doesn't look like anybody's arms. This doesn't look like anybody's legs. You know what I mean? Like, this is just like...
Look at
it's just like their fur.
Big Bird and Oscar.
Exactly.
I recognize them. Yeah. Oh, no, they've been crushed by the ideology.
Yeah. Yeah. So, happy Pride Month to everyone. I mean, like, one of the things that I often will talk about, I mean, like, I think that most of the viewers know that I look at things a lot from a Christian perspective. I'm by no means a saint. I'm by no means like a particularly good or strong Christian, but I think about things a lot in that perspective, and it's sort of a spiritual warfare kind of lens. And like, pride is the cardinal sin. I mean, like, it's like literally definitionally the cardinal sin, because it puts you in the replacement of the perspective of God, because you're so proud it was Lucifer's sin and so on and so on. And I mean, like, the fact that movement that is, it may have started for some particularly legitimate reasons, to be honest with you. I mean, like, there was a time when people were like castigated and persecuted for it and so on and so on. So, I mean, like, I don't have a problem with the idea. I mean, like, it wasn't called pride back then, but I don't have a problem with the idea of sort of like seeking equality for homosexuals. But from there, it's totally been transmogrified into fanatical devotion to the cardinal sin. There's something beautifully ironic and wicked about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it just it also is self-devouring because, I mean, as we've seen in recent years, like every year there's a new controversy about pride. What happened recently was a lot of funding was rescinded from pride organizations because they adopted this sort of pro-Palestine, anti-Israel stance, and then people are like, but hang on, Palestinians and like Hamas and radical Islam, they will like execute gay people. What is going on? And like a lot of their donors it was like Jewish backed, and they're like, well, we don't want to donate to you if you're involving. You're like, why are you full of Palestinian flags? And then there's all this infighting. They can't even keep themselves together, and they're now, I think,
remember, like, denying the police entry, denying like other institutions like firefighters and stuff entry.
Fuck
and
the
people are like,
yeah.
It's like, but I thought you guys were just gay.
Yeah.
You're not just gay, you're like ridiculously political. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Know when you've achieved success. There's gay marriage. Now what they're doing is they're rolling back their successes because we're now getting frustrated, and we're saying, I like gay marriage, yes, pro gay marriage, equality, yes, pro equality. But now people are like, what the hell are you doing? Just stop this insanity. We're sick of it. And why are you pushing it on children? Why do kids need to know about every 100 sexualities that you've invented in the last 2 years? Just stop already.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, that was great. That really lightened the tone, because I mean, like, that whole Henry Nowak thing, I don't want to go to bed angry, and I had such a long day, so I'm very glad to have this moment of levity. We encourage you guys, once again, like, subscribe, share, post, whatever. But most importantly, feel free to comment, because we love reading those comments. We love getting that feedback, and lots of you do. So we really appreciate that. And if you have any interesting topics that you want us to touch on, we are very happy to engage. So thanks for tuning in to another great week. Amy, thanks for putting this together. Mark, my man, great production work behind the scenes. So thank you so much for tuning in.
We'll see you next week.
My friends, let us consider that acuity is the refined clarity of thought and perception which enables one to discern subtle truths.